The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Easy Money, New England.
Oh, can somebody help us here?
We can, because we are real estate and mortgage professionals.
Where you go?
It says come in and browse.
That's right. Come on in, listen up and learn.
How long do you intend to browse?
In a short period of time, our panel will teach you some tricks that might make your house buying easier.
You don't ask her how long she intends to browse.
You might not be looking for a mortgage today, but we'll get you ready.
You don't look like browsers.
Are you looking?
No, what do browsers look like?
Yeah, maybe I'm half browse.
On his father's side.
This is Easy Money, New England.
Let's show the lady we're browse.
With your host, Brian Damico.
Hey, look at us, we're browse. One more word out of you and he gets it, all right?
Hello, and welcome to another edition of our show, Easy Money New England, where every week we bring you money-making opportunities or money-saving ideas, all in the areas of real estate. And today, we have a very interesting show. I'd like to just start with the topic. I think we just found the topic is, you could take $100,000 and in 30 years, that would be worth $5 million. It's just, that's basically the topic of our show. Can't wait to hear about it. And today, who's going to tell us about this is Paul Moore. Paul Moore, he graduated Ohio State with an engineering degree. He started management development track at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. After 5 years, he departed to start a staffing company with a partner. They sold it to a publicly traded firm for $2.9 million 5 years later. Along the way, Paul was finalist for Ernst & Young's Michigan's Entrepreneur of the Year Award for 2 years straight. Paul later entered the real estate sector, where he completed 85 real estate investments and exits, appeared on HGTV special real estate episode, rehabbed and managed dozens of rental properties, developed a waterfront subdivision, and started 2 successful online real estate marketing firms. 3 successful developments, including assisting with development of a Hyatt hotel and a multifamily housing project, led him into the multifamily investment arena. Paul co-hosts a wealth-building podcast called How to Lose Money and is a writer for Bigger Pockets. Paul is also the author of The Perfect Investment, Create Enduring Wealth for the Historic Shift to Multifamily Housing. That book was done in 2016. So, Paul, welcome to our show.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm exhausted hearing all that stuff I did. Did I really do all that? That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I was just, and the one thing that kind of sticks out is, commercial real estate. So you got involved in commercial real estate back in around what year?
I first invested in commercial real estate in 1999, but I first got personally involved in 2000. Started flipping houses. We bought a house on the courthouse steps on an icy day in December, and quickly made $24,000 profit on it and thought, hey, this is easy. I can do 2 of these a month. And it wasn't as easy as we thought, but it was a lot of fun. We flipped dozens and dozens of homes and then some high-end waterfront lots, did a subdivision, all kinds of things, and been doing that since 2000.
Well, seeing as I let the cat out of the bag a little early on the intro, one of the things that struck me is how can you turn $100,000 into $5 million after 30 years?
It's kind of crazy and it doesn't even sound believable. Please don't shut off the podcast right now because I can prove with some easy assumptions it's very possible to do this. Commercial real estate is powerful, and the wealthy, the ultra wealthy, a lot of the Forbes 400 made it through commercial real estate, a lot of the other ones in tech, and they're perpetuating their fortunes through commercial real estate. The tax benefits are amazing. I've got a chapter of my book on that. There's about 13 different tax benefits real estate investors get. And the opportunities to grow your income in a fairly safe, stable manner, if done right, are amazing. I had a friend who once told me you could take $20 million and turn it into a portfolio of $310 million over 20 years. And he proved it. And he showed how the investor could pay virtually no taxes along the way. And so I started fiddling this with myself because a lot of my investors, we do syndications. A lot of my investors invest $50,000 to $100,000, and a couple of them have asked me, what could that grow to if done right? And so we did some calculations and we showed how to take $100,000 over 30 years and turn it into over $5 million You want me to go through a little bit of those calculations?
I mean, that'd be great. I mean, so you talk about a little bit of syndication, so people can actually invest with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're really conservative, so we're actually not investing in a whole lot of things. We've got quite a few investors waiting to get in, but we're looking. We do multifamily, and we're also now looking into, and we're actually investing in self-storage. We just did about 2.8 million in a self-storage deal, and we plan to do more of those. And that's where I actually got a lot of the basis for this calculation from the self-storage industry.
Yeah, so let's talk about this calculation. So. Anyone on the show listening to the show right now, they're all saying, "I'll give you $100,000 to make $5 million in 30 years."
Yeah, well, it's actually quite, and again, don't shut me down here, don't shout me down, but some of these are conservative calculations that I use. So the company we're investing in has been projecting a 20% annual return, and they are projecting a hold time on investments of about 6 years. This is in self-storage. They've been actually getting a much higher return, over 30% annually total return, and their hold time average has been under 3 years, okay? And so if you use their actual numbers, it will be much, much higher than what I'm showing here, but I'm using their projected numbers. So I'm taking an original investment of $100,000. I'm assuming a 6-year hold time per investment. I'm assuming an annual ROI of 20%. And I'm assuming a 0 tax rate because we're going to use the 1031 exchange. And of course, your listeners know what that is, and you know what that is, Brian. But exactly. For a few who might not know, a 1031 exchange is an opportunity to defer capital gains tax by exchanging your property into another one and then doing it again and again. Now, if you don't use the 1031 exchange and you pay the capital gains at the end of every 6-year cycle, the calculation's a little different, which we'll get into. But I'm assuming an 8% preferred return to the investors, and then a normal split after that, which would give them a 20% annual return. And like I said, self-storage has been doing a lot better than that. So if you put in $100,000 in year 0, meaning day 1, over 6 years, if it accumulated at 20% annual return, that would include the 8% preferred return, which is normally paid out of operations, and the principal pay down and the appreciation, and you assumed you set aside any cash returns along the way at 0 interest, literally put it in a bank account or put it under your mattress. Obviously you can do better than that. At the end of 6 years, that 100,000 would turn into 220,000. You get your 100 back and another 120. That's pretty simple math. Now, take that 220,000 and plow 110,000 into 2 projects, 110,000 to each. And in the next 6-year cycle, that 220,000 gained 20% again, but now you got 2 streams at 20% each. And now that becomes 484,000. And again, simple math, 6 years, 20% a year. Do it again for 6 more years at 18. At year 18, you're at, again, now you've got 4 investments at about $121,000 each. Or you can do 2 investments, it doesn't matter how many, but I'm just giving you an example. Now that 100,000 has grown from 484, 20% a year for 6 years, to $1,064,000. Rinse and repeat for 6 more years, that grows to 2.3 million. Rinse and repeat for 6 more years, and your 2.3 million is up to $5.1 million in 3 decades. That's how it's worked. That's how it's done, Brian. It can be done.
So when you say $5 million, is that really your net worth at that time, or is that through all the income that you've been receiving as well?
Well, I'm assuming you're taking all the income along the way and plowing it into under your mattress or putting in a bank account and reinvesting it at the top of the next cycle. I've got another calculation for just taking the appreciation and reinvesting that and living off the income, but I don't have those results right in front of me.
Yeah, so what's interesting is, I know a lot of people that are doing 1031 exchanges, and, the problem has been trying to find another property to kind of go into, because you've had a property that has made money all the time, you had a really good return, but the market's so frothy and you got to take some stuff off the table. They want to take an exchange, and it's been tough trying to find another property that makes sense. Are you seeing that in what you guys are doing?
Incredibly tough. So we've been doing multifamily since I started doing multifamily quasi hotel in North Dakota in 2011. We actually built a beautiful facility for workers in the oil boom. There was these man camps going up all over the place. We had invested in oil and gas in 2010, and my business partner, who has a small jet, could never find a place to stay. He had to fly back to South Dakota every time we went there. So we built a beautiful, instead of a man camp, we built a quasi hotel, quasi multifamily in a small town there, and we were renting it for 13 times the average monthly rate of the rest of America. To kind of flesh that out, the average rental rate for multifamily is about $1 a square foot in the heartland of America. So an 800 square foot apartment might rent for about 800. We were renting 300 square foot, fully furnished with utilities, 300 square foot for $4,000 a month, and we were staying almost full. So we did that for a number of years, sold that, and then I got into multifamily. And multifamily, they said it was at the top of the market when I got into Class B value add multifamily in 2014, but it's just grown and grown ever since. And so to answer your question, it's very, very hard to get a replacement property. A lot of people are choking and basically paying the tax right now.
Yep.
And that's exactly why I started investigating self-storage. I mean, hey, I've got a book called The Perfect Investment, Brian, about multifamily, but here I am venturing out into self-storage. And the reason is it's incredibly fragmented. There are lots and lots, 40,000 or so mom and pop owners across the country. A lot of them are at the time they want to sell now, and they can be dramatically improved by a professional management company. And so the value, the income, the value, and the investor's return is very, very high. That's why I said 20% is actually very realistic. And the actual return that the people we've invested with has been well over 30% a year for many years.
So you mentioned something too that a lot of the ultra wealthy, they they amass most of their fortunes through commercial real estate. But a lot of our listeners and me being in a residential mortgage company, we kind of stick to residential, and how are they amassing so much more money than your average typical 1 to 4 family investor out there today, and how do you get involved in that?
So great question. I think a lot of people who do single family rentals get to a point, if they have a property manager, they can continue to grow and scale, I think. But a lot of them, as you know, Brian, find that it's very, very hard to scale because they get very sick of toilets, tenants, and trash, plus contractors. And so they want to get to a place where they either want to invest passively in a larger operation, let's say a multifamily, let's say 100 plus units, or they want to do their own. It's very, very hard to get into that business, to scale that wall. There's basically, if you study Warren Buffett, he likes to have a moat around every one of his projects or companies. And the ultra wealthy have inadvertently or intentionally built moats around commercial real estate. So it's very, very hard to get in. Basically, they're in, but we are not invited to their party. However, there are ways to sneak in.
What are some of those ways? I mean, I know that, syndication has been a really hot topic as of late. I know that there used to be tenant in commons. I'm hearing a lot about DSTs of late. Yeah. I mean, any of these strategies, or, when you invest in, say, in your company and you do a syndication, does everyone own a portion of that trust, or does everyone own a portion of that property? How does that work?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So real quickly, the barriers to entry that they've erected, the moats, are, number one, you need a lot of cash to qualify for the mortgage. Yeah. You need a lot of net worth, I should say. You need a lot of liquidity to qualify. I mean, we're talking for a $10 million loan, you might need, $10 million in net worth and several million in liquidity just to qualify. You've got to convince commercial brokers who don't want to sell to an unknown entity. They want to be sure that, that you're going to put gas in their BMW and food on their kids' table. And so they will honestly not even present offers for people they don't think are credible. They want experience. The lender has all these high bars to jump. Fannie and Freddie have virtually zero foreclosures in commercial multifamily and self-storage for years. And so they have very high bars you have to jump. And all that and more are, the experience alone. How do you get experience if there's no way to get in? I mean, you have to find a way. And so like you said, there are other ways to do it. You can invest through a crowdfunding site. You can invest in a syndication, which is what we do. You can invest in a DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust, which has its own advantages and disadvantages. 1031 investors, by the way, are finding that they can find replacement properties through a Delaware Statutory Trust when it's very hard to find one individually through a tenant in common arrangement. But we've identified about 7 different ways to get into large-scale multifamily, self-storage, etc. And so if you want, Brian, we can go through those real quick.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, fantastic. So number 1 is through a syndication. So you can invest with a crowdfunder, a company like my company, Wellings Capital. You can send in, $50,000 or $100,000. We want you to vet them really carefully, and we want to vet you as an investor. But generally, accredited investors can invest in this, and they can invest passively. So that's the first way. Now, there's actually 3 or 4 ways to do it passively. I'll go through it real quick. Number 1, you can take a lot of time to vet the sponsor, and once you trust them, you can maybe invest in anything they're doing, which you might invest in their fund, or you might just trust them after that. Number 2, you can dive deeper and you can invest in the sponsor, but you can also vet every deal. And so that would mean you maybe go down to Key West, Florida and see the new storage or apartment deal they're doing, and you see it for yourself and you really look through the numbers. A third way to do it would just be to be more passive and just go through a crowdfunding site and put a little at a time with a lot of different sponsors. And another way would be through a REIT, a real estate investment trust. So those are all ways to invest passively, syndication being the one that we talk about most. That's number 1. Number 2, get a job. Well, most of your real estate investors don't want a job, right?
Right.
But you can get a job with a commercial broker, a property manager, an asset manager, and you can learn the ropes there. While things are so overheated right now, as we record this in summer of 2018, getting a job for some people might be a good opportunity to learn the business and be ready for when the market turns. A third way to get in would be to be a multimillionaire. That sounds kind of crazy. Yeah. Steve Martingale, remember that from the 70s? You can be a millionaire and never pay taxes. How can I be? Anyway, if you have millions of dollars accessible, or if you have a family office, or you inherit a lot of money, you could just jump in at a high level. And it's really risky, and you better have a great team, but it is a way to do it. A fourth way to do it is work your way up the mountain slowly. And that would mean, and a lot of your listeners might really like this way, buy a duplex, fix it up, rent it out, refinance it, or sell it, and then do another one. Maybe do a 4-plex. Do the same thing, then maybe do an 8-plex, 12-plex, 20-plex. I know a guy in Arlington, Texas. His name is Wes. He worked at an airplane manufacturing company. Wes took a bonus of $1,000 in 1993. He invested in a $27,000 duplex. That was his whole down payment. And he sold that for a nice profit when the market got a little better around Dallas. And he bought a 4-plex, sold it for a nice profit, went up to about a 12-plex, sold it for a nice profit. When I met him in 2016, 23 years later, he was selling an $11.8 million 131-unit apartment complex in Arlington. He was getting ready to retire. He had worked his way up the ladder, and amazingly, he did it without a property management firm. Almost all his employees had the same last name. He had a lot of kids. They all worked there. It sounds like a really, really hard path, but it's definitely doable.
And
Quick aside.
And that's the power of the 1031 exchange. I mean, he probably did that through the whole tenure of those years.
He did. And one great thing he did, by the way, is Warren Buffett said, be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. He had the stamina. He had the faith to do this, to where he actually was willing to buy when the market was tanking. And that's a great, great strategy. We could talk about that for another hour if you want to jump on another show. But anyway, we'll get back to that. Steve Burgess has a great book called The Complete Guide to Buying and Selling Apartment Buildings. I don't know, Steve. I wish I did, but he's got a great 2-page chart in there for the power of how to go from, say, a single family to a duplex to a 4, 8, 12, etc. over about 30 years and grow your portfolio that way. So it's a fabulous book. It's a fabulous chart. I think he's a little too aggressive on some of his assumptions. So another path to get in is to be a deal finder. Being a deal finder means you have access through your local real estate association, an uncle, a family, a commercial broker friend, an asset manager who does only big deals but sees small ones that they reject. Maybe that's you. Yeah. You can be a deal finder. You can send those deals to other syndicators who would love you for it, and they would give you a seat at the table. They would give you a piece of their investment. They would give you a piece of ownership, and they would let you tag along and learn the business. And you can put it on your resume and say, I was involved in this project when you go out to do your next deal or 3 deals down the road. Another path is being a capital finder. A capital finder would simply be somebody who goes out and finds equity, finds investors. And if you're really good finding investors, or if you got a network, you can partner with a company like a syndicator and say, hey, I can bring you $3 million toward your next $20 million deal. Please give me a seat at the table. And they might give you ownership. They can't pay you a commission, of course. That's an SEC violation. Yeah. But they can give you a seat at the table and let you potentially work your way into a capital raising role at their company. And it's a great way to get ownership. The last path to get in is to find a mentor. Now, on Bigger Pockets and all over the internet, there's lots of gurus who will sell you all these different weekend packages and all these different training to get into real estate. And I've heard that they often end the weekend by upselling you to another level. And a lot of people have been really burned by that. There's also some non-gurus who have masterminds, mentoring, coaching programs, and they charge anywhere from, say, $5,000 to $25,000 one time, or it could be incrementally, but it's a set amount, and it gives you a long-term and maybe even lifetime access to that mentor and to partner with them in their deals. So Brian, when we decided to jump into Class B value-add multifamily about 4 or 5 years ago, that's the first thing we did. We hired the most expensive mentor we knew of. We actually didn't vet a lot of them. We didn't know a lot at the time, but looking back, it's the most expensive mentor that I'm aware of, and we hired them to partner with them. And we're actually, now that we're just starting into self-storage in 2018, we're doing the same thing there. We don't want, I'm in my mid-50s, and I know that I don't want to learn this on my own. I want to work with a mentor. And so that's the last way to get in.
Very interesting. So, Paul, if some of our people are listening right now and they may be thinking about doing a refinance, I mean, because we're definitely at frothy levels, and people really don't know what to do with the equity. I mean, I hear it all the time. It's like, oh, my house is worth, I mean, not even my house, but my 3-family, which I bought for this, is now worth this. I don't want to sell it because it's my income, but they're not even thinking that they can refinance it and put that money somewhere else. And the problem that we see here in New England is everything is so high that they don't think they're going to get a good return. But it seems like you go over state lines, you go to different areas where there's opportunity. Are there certain opportunities in different states that are very, very like good-looking opportunities in different parts of the country?
Yeah, the multifamily business, like we said, is very, very frothy. We actually, because we're so risk averse, we don't invest in certain places like coastal areas like Boston, New York, San Francisco, LA, because they're often overheated, and that's the playground for REITs and very large offshore investors who are willing to deal with much lower returns just to get in those locations. We also don't invest in places like Florida, Nevada, Arizona, California, and Northwest North Dakota now because they're so up and down. They're so very high in good times and very low in bad times. And even though people make a lot of money in those places, they also lose a lot. And we don't want to be in that group for multifamily, by the way. Yeah. We have 22 criteria we use, Brian, to find a multifamily city we're going to invest in. We're looking for net population migration that's very high. That means a lot of people moving into the market like Raleigh, Charlotte, San Antonio, Houston. We're looking for very low unemployment. We're looking for a diverse economy. We're looking for increasing income, but it doesn't have to be off the charts. We're looking for places that have a nice mix of government, education, business, and we are looking for, and healthcare. And we're looking for cities of about 500,000 or more, because we want to make sure that if our property manager doesn't work out, we have some other options. So we believe that about 2/3 of the success in a single family or multifamily investment are in, number one, the location, which is the city first, and then the submarket second, and the property manager. About 2/3 of the success is there. If you get those right, you're probably going to succeed in your project. Now, in self-storage, we have a completely different set of criteria. I won't go through all that, but I'll tell you that the average self-storage nationwide is about 7 square feet per person. And so we're looking for markets that have less than 7 square feet per person. That varies widely by market. For example, places like Texas and Florida and California that don't have basements, they need a lot more storage. Places like Ohio and Indiana that have basements and attics, they don't need as much storage. But those are some fine details. We're also looking for highly trafficked roads, high visibility, etc. for self-storage. But self-storage can work in much smaller towns than we like to go in for multifamily. So, for example, we're looking in a Raleigh, North Carolina suburb at a self-storage facility that we would never look at a multifamily in a town we would never look at multifamily in, because it's a much smaller town.
Interesting. And do you have some of these, do you have a catalog of public storage places currently that you're looking to have investors invest in, or is it something that you just continually look for and then you already have the investors in place?
Yeah, it's the latter. We have a large list of investors, and people can join the list by talking to us and going through a qualification process. But we are looking for one deal at a time, and we're very careful to vet the deal. We always drive it in person, and we thoroughly analyze it, and then we bring one deal at a time to the investors. There may come a day when we have a catalog, or we might do a fund, Brian, but right now we're doing them one by one.
Very interesting. So Paul, if someone's listening, they want to find out more about you and buy your books, possibly become an investor, just know more of everything about Paul Moore, how do they find you?
They can find us at our website. It's wellingscapital.com. That's WELLINGS capital.com. You can also reach out to us at our podcast. It's called How to Lose Money. It's a wealth building podcast where we explore failures, losses, pain, and difficulties of entrepreneurs and investors who have now been very successful. And Brian, I don't know if you've had any issues like that, but we'd love to have you on the show if
I sure have,
that
and
applies to you.
I'll be signing up for your podcast right after this.
All right, great.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's a fascinating topic. I mean, you got my head racing just for opportunities that, we're always looking for opportunities. They're tough to find, but they're out there. So I just want to thank you again for being on our show. And like we always like to say on our show, Easy Money New England, there's no such thing as easy money. And if you do know any easy money, please let us know about it. Reach out to us at easymoney@newfed.com. Thank you, and see you next week.
It's a new day, it's a new way. Call 877-NEW-FED-1. It's a new way.
Hi folks, it's Brian Damico, owner of NewFed Mortgage. People always ask me, what's the difference between pre-approved and pre-qualified? Well, pre-approval is a more rigorous process than a pre-qualification. It's a written commitment from a lender to extend a mortgage to you for a specific amount and time period. With a pre-approval, you'll be able to set your budget, negotiate confidently, and close faster. Typically, sellers will only accept offers from those who are pre-approved. That's why you need to call NewFed and ask about our pre-approval purchase program so that you get a real pre-approval and get on the fast track to purchasing the home of your dreams. Don't waste time dealing with big banks. Get pre-approved at NewFed today. We're local and we're here to help.
877 NewFed 1.
Subject to credit approval, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1881. Call or see website for details.
877 NewFed 1. It's a new day, it's a new way. Call 877 NewFed 1. It's a new way.
Hi folks, it's Brian Damico, owner of NewFed Mortgage. I've met so many people who want to make money in real estate, but just don't know how. They pay for expensive real estate courses and seminars, and they just left more confused. This is why I wrote the book, Real Estate Riches. Take the first step and buy your first home. Whether you want to buy your first home or an investment property, I share some of the best secrets to real estate success in my new book. Just visit briandamico.com/free book to receive your coupon from Amazon. When you finish reading, give me a call so we can set up your financial future together. That's briandamico.com, briandamico.com/free book. Sign up and receive your free book from Amazon. Subject to credit approval, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1881. Call or see website for details.
877 NewFed 1.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.